Good evening, everyone. I'm Namini Pandita. I'm the founder of Liberal Youth Movement. Welcome you all to our continuous educational sessions on liberal values. For those new to us, we are an organization focused on enhancing political literacy and create an inclusive society regardless of one's origin and profession. So I also want to highlight a few points about our identity. We are not a political party, nor do we have any affiliations, and we are focused on promoting 8 foundational values. Our aim is to foster an ongoing discussion on becoming master of our own lives. For that, we are doing monthly physical sessions, Zoom sessions, bringing experts on board. In addition to these physical and Zoom monthly sessions, we are also doing workshops to ensure that we reach as many young minds as possible. Our wings are spreading, and our aim is to cover all 25 districts and youth. So we are starting doing our workshops, and we will be starting with Candy on this 12. And also we are also about taking action. We are actively working to achieve justice. So best example is that our fundamental rights application challenging emergency regulation. So whenever our fundamental rights are being threatened or violated, we fearlessly come forward and we take action. And also we need to promote the peaceful means of ensuring our rights, safeguarding our rights, and very constitutional methods. So that's why we filed a fundamental rights application. Also, as I said, we operate on fundamental values, 8 foundational values. So to become the master of one's own life story, so we need values like liberty, individualism, tolerance, peace, and responsibility. But also, it's critical to have a proper governing system to safeguard our rights. So that is where these principles and values like skepticism power comes to the stage. So this skepticism about power is something that highlights the importance of questioning authority and recognizing the corrupting nature of power, unchecked power. So remedy is nothing but having rule of law. So today, as we delve deep into the concept of rule of law, let's remember this is more than just a discussion. It's a movement that aims inclusion, change, and brighter tomorrow. So before we start today's session, let me introduce our esteemed guest speaker, Harishke Samaranayake, a senior lawyer who has vast experience in constitutional amendments. Thank you, dear sir, for humbly accepting our invitation and for joining us. And thank you very much, sir, for making time within your busy schedule just to educate us on this value, rule of law, and constitutional amendments. So let's embark on today's session. And also, after the presentation, that the floor will be open for question and answer session. We expect your engagement. And so now, let's start.
Thank you, Namini. Hi, thank you, Namini, for inviting me to share my insights about the rule of law, how the constitutional amendment has worked or has protected rule of law in present context in Sri Lanka. Assuming all of them are not lawyers, let me tell you a story. What is rule of law? There was this beautiful country called Lantai. Let me name the country as Lantai. Lantai was surrounded by beautiful mountains, and there were about 20 million people living in this Lantai, where they used to settle their disputes by fighting with each other, by their showing their strength, and the mode of uh, settling disputes were just fighting. And it's a matter for the people to engage in fighting, and then they show their might with each other, and those who have power, they won, and those who don't have power, they lost. And then this beautiful country decided that it should come up with a way of settling disputes in a better way, rather than showing their might and settling it out. So they decided to appoint few people uh, uh, to be the adjudicators. Before that, there was one person called Ratnayake, who came forward and said, "Come on, everybody, come." Uh, I can see there's a loophole in the system, that when the strongest wins and the poor or the weak always lose. So Ratnayaka said, let's get together and try to appoint somebody to govern our disputes, to resolve our disputes. So they elected a democratic process where they can select a person who can adjudicate their dispute. And then they came up with a judicial system. And this Ratnayaka was a very powerful person in the society, because obviously Ratnayaka in this Lante was very powerful. He had a lot of control, even though he was a democratic person. And there was one day where Ratnayaka's son couldn't pay one of his important bill. So everybody was thinking, no, nothing will happen to Ratnayaka's son, because Ratnayaka's son is one of the most powerful person's son. Therefore, no harm will come to him. So there was a petition against this Ratnayaka's son for not paying a certain bill for utility that he had used. So what happened was, he was brought before the adjudicators, and all the people were thinking that the adjudicators will let him go, because he was a powerful person's son. However, what happened, these independent people who were adjudicating the matter compelled him to pay the utilities that he has used for. So there come even the powers, people who have powers were governed by law. So the rule of law is that is, it's a legal doctrine, obviously. Regardless of their rank or their status, everyone is subject to law. So the people are governed not by the whims and fancies of the governing parties, but by the laws and the understandings, whatever they have decided. So so the rule of law, as opposed to arbitrary decisions. When somebody speaks of rule of law, it is always, the other word for rule of law is, where there is no rule of law, is where there is a dictator, where the persons will be governed by a dictator's word. So whenever there is rule of law, there has to be equality before law, there must be transparency of laws, there has to be an independent judiciary, and accessibility for the people to legal remedy. In context of Sri Lanka, now forget about the story that I just shared with you. In context of Sri Lanka, this rule of law has been a very vital aspect of the country's constitutional amendments. And there is a strong link in between the constitutional amendments and the legal history or the political history of Sri Lanka. So we will not have obviously time to go through all 22 amendments, but as the topic says, let me take you through few constitutional amendments. 1972, as you know, Sri Lanka, it was in 1972, the first Republican constitution of Sri Lanka adopted in 1972, right? And then Sri Lanka was declared to be a republic, as opposed to a dictator or country which is governed by an outside. So the republic, and then in 1978, as you all very well know, the present constitution came in, and in 1987 there was a very important amendment. That was the 13th amendment that we all talk about, and even the recently the president was talking about the constitutional amendment, 13th amendment, and then he was of the view that it must be fully implemented. Remember, mind you, the 13th amendment is the law of the country, right? So it is not fully yet implemented. Why this 13th Amendment was important? Because that was a solution which was passed by the parliament at that time in resolving the Sri Lankan civil war, or at least to um, uh, uh, put up a method to solve the whatever the dispute we had, and established the provincial councils, and it has a lot of provisions regarding the evolution of power for the purpose of securing peace of Sri Lanka, of course, and development in the provinces. Um, and you all very well know that the powers that are enshrined in 13th Amendment are not fully implemented, except the fake provincial council system that one is enjoying now. And the other important amendment is the 19th Amendment. 19th Amendment is very, very important because this, in terms of Sri Lanka and what it was, it restored the rule of law in Sri Lanka. Why do I say that? Let me go through some of the key highlights or key provisions with regard to the 19th Amendment. Remember, there was a time where people believed that the king is very important, that there has to be a king, there has to be a monarch, and he is a God-given person. Therefore, whatever the king says, he is the word of God. Remember, now there is no king, only a democrat. The present king has to be the person. If there is a king right now, you have to definitely distinguish that present king from a democratically elected person. 19th Amendment limited the presidential powers and the tenure. Let me tell you why. Now remember, there was a time where the presidential powers, and over the time with the enactment of 1978, president had enormous amount of powers, and this 19th Amendment limited it to a great extent. And when you limit the power of the president, it prevents the excessive accumulation of power in one individual's hand. As you know, if the same person is elected over and over and over again, even if he is elected, it goes without saying certain ideas of that person will come into life, and without even knowing to one, that elected person may turn as a dictator. So the second, the important amendment, 19th Amendment brought in was the strengthening powers of the Prime Minister's role. The 19th Amendment gave Prime Minister very strong powers. It made him the head of Cabinet of Ministers. Presently, it is the President who is the Cabinet of Ministers. Remember, 19th Amendment, which especially with regard to making the Prime Minister's role important, it swiftly changed from a predominantly presidential system to a parliamentary system. Therefore, there was a balance of power. And the other most important aspect that I think that was enshrined in 19th Amendment was the independence of judiciary and commissions. And independence of judiciary, and there was numerous commissions. If I just go to some of these commissions that are there, even still at present, these commissions are there. The Elections Commission, Public Service Commission, National Police Commission, Audit Service Commission, Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka, the Commission to investigate allegation of bribery and corruption, the Finance Commission, Delimitation Commission, and the National Procurement Commission. Now, out of these commissions, 19th Amendment had all of them, and later we will discuss what 20th Amendment did to them. And the present law, of course, once again reinstated these commissions, which was abolished by 20th Amendment, the Audit Service Commission, and the National Procurement Commission. I will explain you these things in a little later. So, with regard to the rule of law, the independence of judiciary is very important, and you can remember my story where in that Lante, when the chief's son was caught in not paying a utilities bill, even though how much he was powerful, the independent judge who was selected by the people in a democratic process, um, have to uphold the law which is applicable to everybody, irrespective of their rank or the status in the country. So uh, the, the 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 19th Amendment established the Constitutional Council. In fact, the Constitutional Council, from time to time, it underwent certain uh, changes, reforms. Under the 17th Amendment, it was firstly brought in, and there were the composition of the council. For a successful constitutional council, I believe there has to be two components. First, there must be a diverse council, and a very lesser level of political control must be there in the council. And if these two are met, I believe the Constitutional Council is very powerful. So under the 17th Amendment, the council was comprised of 3 ministers of parliament and 7 eminent persons. And 18th Amendment, only MPs. Once again, 19th Amendment, 7 MPs and 3 eminent persons. And under the 20th Amendment, only MPs. And the present law is 7 MPs and 3 eminent persons. So the Constitutional Council had the powers to appoint to the commission that I just said, persons. The other important amendment or the reform the 19th Amendment brought in was the right to information. The right to information was very important, and you can exercise when you know your information. You have the right for the information, because when you know what's happening, when you know how the rulers are utilizing funds that was earned by taxing you, when you know for how much of money that is allocated to school and what is the basis of procurement of a certain supply, the public are said to be aware, and they have the right to information of how the country is governed. Of course, there has to be a limitation for right to information as well, but all those are there in the Right to Information Act. So I'm not going to elaborate much on right to information, whereas I'll go to the other, in my opinion, the dangerous amendment which was brought in as the 20th Amendment. Now, after 19th Amendment, what happened? There was this East attack, and then there was a huge issue pertaining to or the political campaign pertaining to the safety or the national security of Sri Lanka. And as you know, Pujana Peramuna won the election, and thereafter Gotabaya Rajapaksa became the president of the country, and it was his mandate that he will abolish 19th Amendment and bring in 20th Amendment. So it was brought in. What happened? The 20th Amendment, in my opinion, is one of the draconian and it had a drastic impact, negative impact on rule of law, the country, where the rule of law, the procedural safeguards with regard to the rule of law was heavily attacked by the 20th Amendment. Why do I say that? Now, if I may say, certain changes that was brought in by the 20th Amendment. First one is with regard to the qualification to be elected as a president was downgraded from 35 years. It was 35 years age, but they have downgraded it to 30 years age. And the other interesting fact is removing the disqualification of dual citizenship. Yeah, you know very well. The earlier only Sri Lankans can become the president, but the interesting 20th Amendment removed the disqualification on dual citizenship. Remember, these were passed in the parliament, right? They were not forced on the people. They were passed by the people who were elected by the people. So, and there was another interesting provision with regard to Article 33(1) of the Constitution, where there was this duty on the constitution with regard to the president that he must ensure the constitution is respected and upheld. But this 20th Amendment removed that. So it is interesting. The rule of law is that the president need not ensure that the constitution is respected and upheld. So it is interesting. And there was this. There are certain duties on where the president has to follow, like promote national reconciliation and integration, ensure and facilitate the proper functioning of constitutional council and institutions, and all those duties were repealed by the 20th Amendment. And the 20th Amendment gave president power to remove the prime minister at any time. And there was an interesting case on this, whether when Maitripala Sirisena removed the present president as the prime minister, and there was litigation, and the court held that you can't do like that. And there was another interesting position where there was this provision where constitutional provision where president had to act on the advice of the prime minister. And 20th Amendment, what did it do? It said president may consult or act on advice of prime minister. So there's no mandatory requirement. Where remember the prime minister, he is the person who is accountable to the parliament in practical sense. So when the president can act in his own accord, on his own wishes, is it rule of law? This is something that we have to think about. And the president, 20th Amendment gave president to act on his discretion in making appointments and removals. So the word is the president may consult the prime minister in making the approvals and appointments. So the other interesting amendment which was brought in by 20th Amendment is the immunity of the president. So president cannot be sued. So there are so much of other constitutional amendments, but I am not going to embark on all the amendments. But I just highlighted a few because I thought, in my opinion, they are very important, because those have had a very, in one way, with regard to 20th Amendment, very negative impact on a person's in broader sense life. It's where the person is not governed by rule of law, but by the ideas or the whims and fancies of the governing person. So there comes the 21st Amendment, which was brought in recently, and the president is the Minister of Defense right now. And if there was a fundamental right violation case, you can file a case against the president. So the immunity is somewhat relaxed or removed. And under the 21st Amendment, the president can hold ministerial portfolios after consultation with the prime minister. With regard to, but these provisions could be bypassed if a national government can be formed with other parties. So that's in my opinion, a negative point. So why rule of law and why these constitutional amendments are very important? I know the Constitution is a big book. None of us are very fond of it unless we are reading that book and applying it in our personal life, because this is a book where you don't apply like you will apply criminal penal code or civil procedure code. This is the foundation of all the codes. This is the foundation of our life. And the Constitution, even despite it is so much important, the Constitution is not even taught in our schools and our curriculum. No wonder why we are bankrupt or in a country which is in the verge of bankruptcy in the eyes of the international law. I mean, when a person is unaware what their rights are, when the citizen is not enforcing their rights, when the citizen is not educated about their rights, I mean, the end of rule of law and the beginning of anarchy. So, my dear friends, I believe the rule of law is where you are governed by law and not by the other person's whims and fancies and what other persons thought or think correct. So, in at all cost, we must always fight to protect our rights. As if we don't protect our rights, and if we don't fight for our rights, and if we don't educate, if we don't try to push to vindicate our rights, we will see a country where the citizens are governed not with rule of law, but with the the happy mood of the or the mood of the governing persons. So the constitution and the rule of law are very important. The rule of law is extremely important because the constitution protects the rule of law. So as you saw, the 19th Amendment was washed by 20th Amendment. So, but anyhow, we saw the result, and now we are at 21st Amendment. Is it sufficient? Are we going in a proper, correct direction? Is something that you all can think about. Namini, I believe I summarized the provisions that was available. I hand over the floor to Namini so you can guide us. I will be available if you want to raise a few concerns or share your thoughts.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all for your attention so far. So I think we have covered a lot. So now the floor is open for question and answer session. So I think that you all have ideas, thoughts, and questions. So don't hesitate, and please feel free to raise your hands or type your question in chat. And also, for more updates and more content, our links to our social media platforms have been mentioned in the chat. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and also you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Later, we will upload this whole video to YouTube because at this very moment, our whole these Zoom sessions being hacked, so we can't accept new comers to the Zoom session. Anyway, let's not worry about that. We will upload this video to our YouTube. So this is the time to share your thoughts, your ideas, and to raise your questions. Please.
Hello, Namin.
Hello. Yes.
You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Namin, I would like to raise a question regarding the host statements about the 19th Amendment. So they are actually, I think, as I know, when it comes to the 19th Amendment, the creation of 19th Amendment, the the people who were responsible for creating that 19th Amendment was mainly were our Jampati Vikramaratne and was that TNA MP, like I can't remember the name of there was another person. I think those two people even agreed that there were holes in the 19th Amendment as well. So the host explained that there were holes in the 20th Amendment, and it was not good for the democracy of the country. But the problem is, even in the 19th Amendment, there were holes as well. So, since I don't have that technical background about these amendments, I would like to know what kind of issues there were in the 19th Amendment as well, because we had to have a good understanding about those holes as well if we are to come up with a good amendment. So I would like to know his opinions about those issues we had in the 19th Amendment. I hope the question was clear.
Yeah, the question is clear. Let me share my views on what Udit, I believe. Yeah, just shared. If you take in the broader sense, of course, there was an issue of dual leadership, and as you remember, there was a bit of an issue between the president, the powers exercising by the president, and the prime minister. We all know what happened to that case, no? Where the president tried to remove the prime minister, and then the court had to intervene and reinstated him back. So that issue was there. And with regard to the dissolution of the parliament, the 19th amendment restricted the president amendment to dissolve the parliament until 4.5 years, right? So one can say that's an issue. That's an issue, but in my opinion, if a parliament is elected, and if it's not, if it's elected, we have to come up with a system where the electors are given, the people who, that is the public, is given to remove the parliamentarians, rather than president having power to remove or to dissolve the parliament. For instance, if one can come up with latest technologies and everything, if one can come up with a system where, if today I think I don't like the person name X, so I won't remove him. So if I can digitally recall my vote back, then he will get 1 vote less from his total vote. I mean, if you can come up with something like that, right to recall the elected parliamentarian, that will be best. And so dissolution of parliament is one of the other issues. Some say that 19th Amendment was brought in, and the limitation of presidential terms is one of the issues that the supporters, promoters for 20th Amendment is talking about. Promoters of 20th Amendment thought that removing a president's people's power to elect a president for more than 2 terms is a violation. They thought if a person is good and if the people like him, he can be elected over and over again for any amount of time. So that is one of the other issue. But in my opinion, the few points that I raised, they do not directly link with the concept of rule of law. For instance, if there is a, of course there are loopholes, but if there is a bit of a complexity of how 2 leaders are exercising their powers, especially when both of them are elected from 2 different parties, there was another organ, which is the judiciary, who always stepped in and utilized checks and balances to balance the powers. So in my opinion, 19th Amendment is one of the best that we have had, but not the ideal one. I don't think no one can achieve an ideal constitution in anywhere in the world, it is there, but nobody knows what it is. But I think for Sri Lanka, for us to prosper, we had to, in my opinion, this is my personal opinion, we must fully implement the 13th Amendment as it is, as far as it is the law. And if we can look into the 19th Amendment or an amendment better than that, which limiting further powers of the president. So what we have done is we have democratically elected a king by keeping this executive presidency. So this is something dangerous, and we show how it is dangerous. But we'll all have to remember the power of the people is always more than the elected, or rather the single persons or the single political party's power. We all saw it. I am not a person who encourages and engage in violent activities. I do not. I do not encourage them, but uh, I am a person who supported the Aragalaya which played within the four corners of law. So obviously, Arangalaya does not mean setting fire to houses and killing people. That's not Arangalaya. That's right. That's terrorism. But fighting for your rights to protect the rule of law is very important. When and we are seeing from commercial items, news items, when a person's power is limited or a person's power is unlimited, how damaging it can be. Now it is coming into light how directions were given to the central bank by the power people who were in authority in power with regard to the currencies and how the country's fiscal policy was driven. So I think, of course, every amendment of these things, what we have gone through has pros and cons. But the reason why I emphasize on the bad side of the 20th Amendment, I believe that was really bad. It's not just bad; it was really bad. So I believe with it, I highlighted a few points.
Thank you, sir. And I think Nirushini has a question.
Yes, Nirushini?
Nirushini? Nirushini, can you hear us? You can post your question.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes, Nirushini.
Yeah. So, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear, Nirushini. Loud and clear.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So, when it going back to the topic, so can I know about the modern dimensions of rule of law instead of the conservational types of topics we have been talking about? So, can I specifically know about the modern dimensions of rule of law?
Hello. Yeah, you can hear me now, right? I would say the modern the hello, is my mic is on? Yeah. I would say the human rights, the rights of the people. Human rights is one of the modern way of protecting rule of law. Protection of fundamental rights is protecting the rule of law. And well, another modern dimension of rule of law is where there is transparency and accountability in conducting affairs of a state. I mean, the Right to Information Act, I believe, does much justice. And we, all of us, must be watching news, no, the young people. So we saw how right to information has given certain information to public, where people are now making a big fuss about and claiming to hold these people accountable with regard to certain payments made to the electricity bill, where the same, if the people are to be judged under the rule of law, if the electricity supply to Mihintale is cut, it has to be cut to all the political. I don't know whether those things are correct or wrong, but leave it as it is. If Mihintale's power supply is disrupted for non-payment of bills, then the ruler's sons, or as they claim, his house, electricity supply must be disconnected. And one of the other modern aspect is judicial independence, which was there and even it is still there, and access to justice. This is where I think we are lacking. It is when there is no point of rule of law when people don't have access to justice. So access to justice is also meaning access to lawyers. So how well are lawyers accessible? Is it going to court is cheap? Those are things I think that we have to talk about. So I believe one of the, in my opinion, another modern aspect is that our digital rights and cyber securities. Right? It is also part of rule of law. I mean, we are living in a digital era. Now I just for about a couple of hours back tried to book a wildlife bungalow belonging to Wildlife Department of Yala. But every time I check, maybe I'm not, I have a fair knowledge of how these computer things works. But every time I check, Yala bungalows are unable to book. But if you know the right person to speak to, they are available. I mean, if a citizen cannot book a bungalow, which is a service given to a public, by using a platform which is available to people, what's the point of having such a system? What's the point of having just a fake web page without being given access? And cyber transparency is also one of the other key important factor in modern rule of law, because you can say I have a website, but none of these websites works, and your rights and your data are not protected. So these are the modern aspects, I believe, that one has to think about. I think we as ordinary citizens, we are more concerned about the services provided to us by the state. If the services provided services provided to us by the state is not fully functional, there's no point of we are frustrated. No, we are frustrated. So I believe the modern dimensions include these things, and you can enlighten me if you think another aspect is modern dimension of rule of law.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. People who watch us on our social media, Facebook and YouTube also, they have raised several questions. So I will read the question, sir. So
Sure.
this question has been raised by Tisara. So his question is, even though there are a number of amendments to the present constitution, why can't we have a proper amendment for establishing rule of law? What is the role of the judiciary in this regard?
Well, what is a proper amendment with regard to establishing rule of law is it's a very broad it's a very broad topic, and when you decide what is proper for the public of Sri Lanka, numerous factors have to be taken into account. Their ethnicity and their language, and the people's financial capacity, political background, religious rights, all those things. So what is proper has to be decided in a democratic process. But I can certainly comment on the role of the judiciary. The judges have been the guardian angels of our rights throughout in Sri Lanka, right? There have been certain instances where some judges has violated the cardinal rule of being transparent, but these people were held accountable. But as a whole, our judiciary had been the guardian angel of our rights, including rule of law. Whenever certain organs of the government try to overact, judiciary has always stepped in and tried to balance these powers. So the judges, I think, you can have corrupt president, you can have a corrupt parliamentarian, but you shall never have a corrupt judge. I believe we are very successful in calling our good judges as very respected judges, because I believe almost all of them are not corrupt and our system. But there is an issue with regard to system. For instance, if I go to apply for a certified copy of the case record, I believe there are a few lawyers here in the forum. So if you have applied for a certified copy of the case record where you are representing a client, how easily can you get it done? For instance, if you come to Colombo, let's say traffic court, all of us had a lot of cases. All of you will come, either you drive or will drive a vehicle in one day. So it's nothing. It goes. It's very obvious that you will have to, however good you may be, you will have to go to a traffic court one of these days. Even I myself was a defendant in a traffic action. So when you go and apply a certified copy of the case record, that service given to you by the state, you think it's easy to get the services done. At least you have to go, at least one day you have to go to and go and meet the registrar to give a letter or motion saying that you need a certificate copy. The other day you have to go because he will count and keep the copies, and then the next day you have to go and pay the amount, and the other day you have to go and collect the copy. So for a simple task of, I'm not generalizing all the registries in Sri Lanka, but this, for instance, these are things that I have personal experience. So, so the registry is also part of judiciary. It's part of the legal system. So when the people's rights are, and when a person is accused by the police wrongfully, judges have always stepped in, and most of the time judges are trained enough to identify how craftily the police has manipulated most of the cases against the innocent people. So I believe the more training to judiciary and giving them opportunities out of the country for further training, and having a diverse experience from different countries will enhance the judges' capacities in resolving disputes. But as far as I know, and in my experience, judges have always been a guardian angel of our rights and the rule of law. I mean, I think that gives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. And also, there's another question. Can't we have right to privacy as same as the right to information, RTI, as a rule of law principle?
Can you repeat the question? Can't we?
Can't we have right to privacy as same as the right to information as a rule of law principle?
Well, I believe right to information as well as right to privacy both are now there as the laws of the country. Right to Information Act was established, and right to data protection, right to privacy was. Let me give you the act number. There was a legislation, data protection act, where the now there is a law. You can't just store data that you have. There's so much of I am not an expert on the new law with regard to the data protection act, but if you can just search Google, the act is there. I believe those, as long as they are part of the law of the country, that's the people, the subjects or the citizens must be governed by those laws. So that's part of the rule of the issue is not having the laws, rather whether we are complying with those laws. So that is where the state must improve in protecting rights by fully implementing the rule of law.
There is another question.
Yes. So Personal Data Protection Act number 9 of 2022. That's the act which deals with the person's right to privacy into an extent In fact, taking photographs is also argued without the other person's consent can be covered under this. What is the other question, Namini?
Yes, sir. This has been raised by Nilanta Pawan. Uh, why we can't have a stable constitution that facilitate more time to think of economic growth? France also has executive presidency government. Are there power conflict between French president and prime minister? Why can't we follow the French constitution model? As I understand, France and Sri Lanka are republic countries. Both are republic countries.
Well, that question is too advanced because I am not an expert on the French, the constitution. I have a very limited resources and knowledge about the French constitution, but I can tell you economic growth and the Sri Lankan constitutions are, you have certain aspects about economic growth in the Sri Lankan constitution. There are certain provisions where the constitution guarantees that the elimination of poverty is one of the main objects of the constitution. But economic rights of the people are important as well as the political rights of the people. But the issue is, for one to vindicate the economic rights, you have to have resources, you have to have money, you have to have money. So we are living in a country, we are trying to come out of a debt. So you can have 100 or 101 rights enshrined in the constitution, but if the people are not acting to safeguard it, or the people are not aware about it, at least the people are not fighting to protect or to ask for that right, I mean, you can't expect an economic growth. There are provisions in our constitution that deals with economic growth, that the state must work for the economic growth. But how can how we are in a fix, in fact. So I'm sorry, I am unable to understand about the comparison between the French constitution model and Sri Lanka. So in my experience, economic growth is enshrined in the constitution, but we have done only a few to actually go for an economic growth. Having executive presidency itself is an attack on economic growth. It's a hindrance, the constitutional hindrance to achieve an economic growth, when the executive presidency or the unnecessary power of the politicians to interfere with the fiscal policies. There are problems. We are facing that problem. Namini?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. With the limited time we have, sir, I don't think we can get any more questions.
Sure.
Sir, I think, sir, we should thoroughly confine into a way forward. So, sir, what do you think that we as citizens, what do we can do to improve rule of law in this country?
Namini, that's a very good question. What we can do to improve the rule of law? The first thing that we can do to improve the rule of law is to protect the democracy, to start vindicating your rights and complying or obligating your responsibilities. Start paying taxes. That's the simplest thing one can do. Secondly, if you see anywhere where injustice has occurred, where it may be a government institution, it may be an authority, department, whatever, if you see that, speaks against that. Say that you have rights. So you do your part, and then the state will, when you do your part, it eventually the state have to do its part. And if the state is not doing that part, you have the right to vindicate your rights, because you can always trust on the judiciary of Sri Lanka, where they have always upheld and will uphold the rule of law. So secondly, try to educate. If you are lawyers, even non-lawyers who are thinking alike, to promote rule of law, always educate the others. About that you shall be governed by law and not by the people's whims and fancies. And in my opinion, the other method where we can protect the rule of law is by fully trying to abolish the executive presidency and to have a person who is accountable to parliament, ultimately to the public. I think those are the three main points I would share. There are so much of others. I don't think I am not blessed with the time to share that.
Thank you very much, sir. So before we conclude, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to all of you for being a part of this session. And a special thanks to our guest speaker, Mr. Harishke Samaranayake, for sharing his invaluable insights. And to each participant, thank you for your engagement, your questions, and for contributing to this enriching session. And also, let's continue our discussions and dialogue on these liberal values and pressing issues of the country. I hope you all will join in our future events and upcoming events. So until our next session, stay curious and stay connected. And please follow our social media platforms that you can see all the links in the chat. And so stay connected. Good night. Take care.